My name is Natalie. I am a climate activist. I think I'm an aspiring climate negotiator because I think the global negotiations around climate change have been something that I'm quite interested about lately. I am a founder of All for Climate Action, which is a youth-led organization that focuses more on climate democracy, inclusive climate empowerment, and lastly, that is localized climate solutions. I'm also a linguist, but I think I have found myself in the climate space because of passion. So I've been in this space for about 5 years. So it's something that not really, um, I didn't really get to learn more or get educated or a certain degree related to what I do, but I really love the space. I've been creatively using the linguistic knowledge that I have to disseminate information on climate change and also just really understanding the language within the space. How is it being used? How are people raising awareness on climate change issues? Okay, so when we're looking at climate negotiation, wow, this is really a long process. But I think global leaders, global leaders got to a point to say that climate change is something that is affecting everyone. But we need to negotiate on this, or on the same table to say there are the people who really contributed much to this, and there are people who are also vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. But how then can we fight together, regardless of the difference that we have? Um, and yet we have one common goal, one common problem. So when we're talking about this climate negotiations, these are countries coming together under the United Nations framework on climate change convention, that is the UNFCCC, to say how then can we fight climate change together. So when these negotiations happen, there are quite a lot of meetings that happen. Talk about the regional meetings before the COPs. Right now, currently, there's the Bonn conference that are happening. There are other meetings that happen before the COP. So right now, um, people are attending the conference in Bonn where they are negotiating um, different texts, they are negotiating on different tracks that also contribute to the COP. So I can say that the COP now becomes a conference of all the parties, but however, there are other meetings that happen before that. And they then come to some sort of like a consensus to say, this is what we all agree to. And the reason why some of these negotiations take so long is because it's they try by all means to make sure that everyone agrees to a certain text, everyone agrees to a certain obligation. So as long as a certain country says no, to some point these negotiations do not get approved. So it's quite an interesting space though to also understand how negotiations work. And I think now that I'm getting to an understanding of how these negotiations work, you also need to be patient with them because it's a long process. It's a process on its own. So for us to really conclude to say we have come up with this, and this is the fund that we're giving to fight against climate change, it comes through the negotiation. Well, I think it's political will above everything else. As long as there is no political will, there is no action. I think that's one of the biggest issues that we are fighting for within most countries actually. Either it's national, either it's regional, either the global space itself. Where there is no political will, there is no action. And the other thing is if there is no political will, probably from the global north to say, really, we really need to take uh, responsibility to fight against climate change. This is what we caused, and we really need to take that responsibility. It's our fault. And if there is no political will to say, okay, we accept that we made this, then that means we're not really going anywhere. So I believe that political will have got that stronghold to say, do we really have a future or not? And then you also look at issues to do with climate finance. Um, I think just looking at the negotiation language that the global south use and the global north use, the global south uses terms to do with reparations, the loss and damage, the climate adaptation, and yet the global north is also using issues to do, they're talking more on issues to do in promoting market mechanisms, they're promoting technology and innovation, which is not bad. But however, when we come to climate finance, these are two differences that from different sides of the globe. They want their own thing done in their own way, and we want our own things done in our own way. So in a way, I think it does really affect even the funding itself. How do we come to a conclusion to say this is how we work? So already they are segments or that have been created because we have two different issues that we really want to address. So climate finance is another issue, and you also realize that these countries, these countries perhaps we do have different interests. So probably some will actually say that we are up for the fossil fuels. Some will say we are not up for it. So those are some of the issues that still hang in within the space that actually disables um, the countries to really come up to a conclusion within the negotiations. I would say collectively, one of the first actions that we need to do is to really understand where we are as the globe, where we are as a nation. And if we get to understand how climate change is affecting Zimbabwe and also how climate change can be fought in Zimbabwe, then we have some way to start, because I also believe in localized climate solutions. As long as we do not understand how climate change is bringing in forth the climate change risks that we are facing every day, that means we're not able to come up with our own solutions. So I believe that once we get an understanding of what is Africa really fighting for, what is Africa really fighting for in terms of we can talk about the political issues, the climate political space. What is it that Africa really wants from that space? What is it that Africa is getting affected from climate change? And understanding that problem, I think that's where innovation comes in to say, now we understand our problem. This is the solution to our problem. But again, still goes back to the issue of political will. Are we willing to do that? And for as long as there is political will, I'm sure that climate finance is also it's also automatic to get. Well, I'm already thinking which one should I pick? But just being a young person, we have been involved in quite a number of projects. I did like to I did like to talk about more of this project that I've recently been part of for the past 3 years. I've been part of the community frontline workers with communal frontline workers with accountability lab, where we have been doing more of community engagements and collecting data from young people and just the community in general. And being part of it, I really got to understand how important issues to do with governance, issues to do with accountability is. That each and every one of us, we do have a social contract that we are supposed to be up to, that we're supposed to look up to, there are certain responsibilities that you and I should take within the society, that the government should take within the society, that the civic space should take within the society. And being part of that initiative, um, I'm happy that I'm also part of that program this year as an entrepreneur, to say such programs also helping such leaders like me to say, how can we also try to be more accountable on climate change issues? How can we have more transparent, accountable system, anything related to climate? How is the government performing within within the climate policies, or the legal frameworks? So just being able to um, track within the progress that the government is doing, I think that's a great initiative itself. And just, I think, if the government says this is what we're going to do, there's also a person who needs to follow up to say, where are we? You say this, you say that we are up, we are going to achieve this. How far have we gone? So it's just carrying out such accountability and transparency um, advocacy matters forward is also a good initiative. Well, I think there is more of the adult-centric space within the climate negotiations. How active. So I think there is more of tokenism within the space, that young people have attended COPs. It can be recorded that they have 20,000 young people attending, but how many young people are really there on the tables, really negotiating for their countries? So that's where the gap is. We have lived decades and decades just counting numbers, but not really counting the real participation of young people. There's a big difference between attending and participating with these decision-making processes. So there is need for us to really influence this climate, the structures within the negotiation space, to say, how can young people then be able to take seats within these structures? If it's the negotiation team within the country, how can young people also participate in such platforms? I'm also grateful to be nominated by my government to say that, Natalie, we need you to be part of this academy. That's the Young Climate Negotiator Academy. To say, as young people, yes, we can do activism, but there's more to that. There is more to contribute on the table. We need young people to have that understanding of what negotiations are really are, and how can you be part of it? How can you contribute as a young person? And I think those are the spaces that needs to be covered within the space, to say, how can we create an intergenerational space for everyone? We can learn from the adults and we can lead as young people. So having a balance between the elderly and the young people, because already today we are the futures of today. So we need to be at the center of it. And already climate change is affecting us. So I think it's a matter of creating that space and that balance between, to say, how can young people be part of everything that can be involved or related to climate change issues. I think I would really like to share my experience on this, to say that if you're a person who is curious enough, I have been always asking myself, why is this happening? And once you ask yourself such questions, there's a time that you also feel that you want to be part of the action. And I've been asking myself, how can I also be part of these negotiations? How can I also be part of a meaningful youth participation? There's nothing wrong with getting in the streets, but to what extent is it also impacting? To what extent does my work get some sort of like, how can I also advance climate action? So I think as a young person, you also need to be curious to say, why is this happening? And you need to find out why, and also try to come up also with solutions to say, what can I do best to this? And I think just keep on letting the fire in. I think one of the best things that a young person can do, inform yourself, read, research, and lead. That's one of the best way. Find information. How are things being done? And how can I also do better? Enhance yourself with knowledge. Get as much knowledge as possible. And yeah, keep reading, keep researching. I think that will be my advice. Just lead. As long, I think you have to listen to your heart. Where your heart is, just do it. I think that's how I have been doing my things. Whatever you feel like doing in terms of leading, just do it. That's why I'm here, because I'm passionate about climate change issues. I'm here because I love working with the people. Just lead in any way. Yeah.